you do a lot of podcasts or no?
Some, I mean, not like every day, but something that
You're a presenter though.
we like to get the word out any way we can, right?
So how long have you been running presentations like you did for us today? And how do you like actually presenting, like doing the presentations?
So me personally,
Yeah.
or college hockey?
You personally.
So it's actually funny. This is my second month with College Hockey Inc.
Okay.
I was coaching in the ECHL for the last 5 years in Allen, and then my wife and I just traveling around the summer, kind of thinking about what I wanted to do next in hockey. And I was actually scrolling on Twitter and I saw this tweet because I had followed College Hockey Inc. And I just saw that they were hiring, and I was like, geez, I'll just apply and see what happens. And I did kind of want to step away from the coaching aspect of things and get more into like an organization where I could um, just advance my career. I think that me not having played at a high level, I didn't play Division 1, I didn't play pro. So I think my strengths have always been like, how can I make myself valuable to this team, right? And I did that for a pretty decent stint of time, and then I was thinking, well, what's next after this, right? I'm kind of at a branch where I'm either going to go scout somewhere because I had scouting experience, and every job I've had has been basically helping coaches find players that can fit their program. And this kind of just fell into my lap, and I was like, this is perfect. I already know the recruiting pools. I know like some guys that are recruiting, and so I think it was kind of just like almost like a sign, right? I should do this, and my coaching experience has helped me, do these presentations. It's a lot more intimidating talking to a room of first or second round draft picks than kids that are just wanting the information, or parents that are interested in going to the NCAA.
Right. So how did you end up getting? Well, so obviously you said you were coaching before that, but what was your background coming up through hockey? Like, how did you get into hockey, and then how did you end up coaching up to the East Coast League or other experience that you had coaching?
Yeah, so I played growing up, AAA, played high school, and then I just went to college, just as a regular student. I went down to University of Tampa, believe it or not. And the reason for that, if you're familiar with Pittsburgh weather, they had what was called Snowmageddon one year. It happened to be my junior year of high school, and that snowstorm basically put in my mind that I am going south for school. So I said I'm a city guy. I kind of want to be in the city. I want to go south. Started looking at a map and just kind of threw a dart and said, most of my high school goes to Pitt, Penn State, or OU, or one of those colleges around there. I wanted to just get out there and see what was what the world had to offer. So yeah, I went down to University of Tampa, and I was really big into sports science, specifically like athlete performance. And one of the reasons why I chose that school is because they had a human performance lab at the university where we would run studies on, what is the impact of nutrition on strength and conditioning, or do smelling salts actually provide performance, or is it more of a placebo effect, right? And so as oddly enough, as I was doing that research at school, the lab expanded greatly, and we got to do different side projects. One of those side projects was we ran the strength and conditioning tests for the Tampa Bay Lightning during their development camps and during their training camp. So I was able to get in with the Lightning through that connection. Was able to intern with them my senior year, and after I worked for the Lightning, I was like, I don't care what degree I got, I'm going to go work in hockey. So I moved back to Pittsburgh, started coaching U16, and then I just kind of did everything that I could to meet as many people those years, shaking hands, kissing babies. I got a chance to work in junior hockey, the NA3HL. That program was amazing because
What program was it?
it was the Pittsburgh Vengeance. And, even if they're not the USHL level of play, they ran that program like it was a professional organization. They had scouts, they had emphasis on player development, skill development, doing all the right things on and off the ice. um, a great head coach that I learned a lot from, and then I was able to parlay that experience into being the director of hockey ops at Colgate, and then I kind of carried that down to the ECHL for the past 5 years as an assistant coach, working on, you know, it's the ECHL. You got to wear all hats, right? Everything from practice planning, recruiting, managing our salary cap, even some of the smaller jobs that are still important, like dealing with immigration, dealing with team
Oh yeah, because
travel,
you have a lot of that.
all
Oh
a
yeah.
whole big thing. And anyone in the ECHL will tell you the biggest headache in the world is the housing situation, because we provide housing in the ECHL, and it's just there's no magic combination that will make everybody happy, right? And then they bring a wife or a girlfriend down, and that kind of throws a wrench in the plans. So it's all good stuff though. It's not like there's any one, like, at the end of the day you're watching hockey and doing what you like, right? So
Yeah, for sure. So do you plan to get back into coaching at some point? Or are you kind of just like seeing through college hockey Inc. like what happens and where it goes?
yeah, I mean, I'm so new at this job that I haven't really thought anything about where to go after this. I think that with the new ruling, CHL players are eligible now. There's a lot of opportunity for us to be that educational piece for the CHL teams. And Sean Hogan, our executive director, has had those conversations with the higher ups at not only each league, the OHL, Western Hockey League, and Quebec League, but the CHL as well. I think they want to know the information. It's obviously very important for them to get that now that their players are eligible. So my hope is that our organization kind of rises to the top and says to everybody that we're the go-to source for anything recruiting, eligibility, college hockey. How can that present itself as like the development path? You can play juniors anywhere, you go to college hockey, and then from there, you go to the NHL. So that's been my main focus, and it's been kind of a whirlwind the first month or so of this job, but it's all stuff that I like. Talking hockey, yeah. So it's been pretty seamless so far.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the PowerTech online membership program. If you've been listening to Andy and I wondering, hey, how are they able to get all this podcast content out there? Well, that's because of our members. For just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our online video library, including hundreds of videos of Coach Andy teaching, and have the option for consultation calls with Andy or myself to go over anything you need. We can cover training, nutrition, coaching, parenting, agents, the junior college hockey path, whatever's of interest to you. You'll also be able to participate in our popular Ask Me Anything episodes, have access to special discount codes, and be given priority for any PowerTech in-person camps or events. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Visit powertechhockey.ca/memberships or find the link in the description of this video to learn more. So talk about College Hockey Inc. Just for people that don't know, like we've worked with you guys in the past and all that stuff, but just for the listeners, like what are you guys, what do you do? What's the purpose of College Hockey Inc. and what's kind of the mission in your role and then more broadly for the organization?
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of funny. Not a lot of people know what we do. We have like a big presence online, but at our core, we're an education organization. So we educate players, parents, families, coaches, advisors on all things college hockey. So eligibility, recruiting, any academic components they need to be made aware of. So that's kind of our bread and butter. Is we're a free organization. We're funded by the NHL to do this job, and you don't necessarily need an agent or an advisor. You can have one if you want, but we are that free resource for anyone looking to get more information on the NCAA.
So that's like like reaching out, having conversations. You guys provide information on just the path broadly and specifically. Do you do that by program too? Like, do you work in combination with the NCAA programs individually, or are you just kind of like a high level overview of the basics of what you need to know?
Yeah, I mean, we will do some stuff if we're asked, right? Like, do a seminar for this team, or put on some educational piece, or maybe tailor our research a little bit to include X, Y, and Z parameters. But really, we're funded by the NHL to promote the NCAA development path. So we're not affiliated with any NCAA school. It's really just we're highlighting that development path, and we try to stay not impartial because that's not the right word, but every program has a fit for a certain type of player, right? And so if you're a super high draft pick and someone who is gonna make it to the NHL in the next couple years, there's an NCAA program that will fit your path, and that will be the right choice for you. If you're a late bloomer and maybe you're playing in a lower level at 16, 17, 18 years old, but you are eventually going to become a division 1 player, there's a program that will fit your development path. And the biggest thing that I'm learning in this job is that um, it's just there's no one size fits all, right? College hockey is so broad and it's going to expand, I think, significantly in the coming years, to the point where I think it will be the go-to pathway for players to go from minor hockey, you matriculate up to juniors, wherever that might be. And then if you have hopes of continuing your playing career after college, then the next logical step would be the NCAA.
Yeah, yeah, I think because the one thing that was always super attractive about college to me is that development arc and how you have the extra time. Like we were talking before this, just about with some of the families that are asking questions. Like there's just a lot of them just don't know a lot of information about what the path actually looks like. So like you were just in passing mentioning that what the development model is of like a college style player. So if you had to outline what that is, like the key pieces of development that college hockey offers versus CHL style program? Like, what are the highlights of what that path looks like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the number one thing is that you're going to have time to develop. And by time to develop, I mean you're not pushed into playing so many games that you can't really learn from any mistakes, or you can't really have time to work on skill development. So one of the biggest benefits of choosing NCAA is the structure of your work week. You're going to practice, 4 or 5 times a week in the NCAA. In between those practice sessions, you're going to have ones that are more structured, systems, team practices. You're going to have others that are more closely related to skill development. Um, Within those days as well, off the ice, you're going to be working with coaches on video. So learning hockey IQ. How do I read this situation? Is this something that I should do in this position versus that position? Notifying or noticing the time and score aspect of your game, and developing and visualizing is a huge component of that. And then again, when you're not practicing doing video with the coaches, you're in the weight room physically developing into the most elite athlete you can try to become. They'll also put you through set exercises on injury prevention, which is super huge. And they say like rehab when you get hurt, but prehab if you don't want to get hurt, right? And so yeah, the injury prevention piece. And then finally, the games, right? People don't really think of the NCAA games as mirroring an NHL schedule, just because of the quantity is so different. But if you look at the style of play, in order to hold your own and be a contributor in the NCAA, you have to be a complete hockey player. You have to compete on both sides of the puck. You have to physically know where to go and get there, but mentally figure out what is my duty, and if my line mate next to me misses his assignment, what's my next move, right? You have to anticipate at set. You think the game so much quicker just because the players are older, players are faster, stronger. Some guys are 24 and 25 in
Yeah,
the
for sure.
NCAA.
Yeah, the way I like explaining it is just there's a maturity about the college style game because probably mostly to do with the age and the actual physical development, the mental development. But I like that it turns into how called it a work week, right? And it really that is what it feels like. Like having played college hockey, it felt and I treated it like this is a 9 to 5 job plus 2 hours at the start and 2 hours at the end for like practices and workouts. And that's how, for a more mature player, when you have that time to really grind down on what skills do I specifically need to work on, what kind of work do I need to be doing in the gym, you actually have time dedicated to doing those things. Where for younger players, they might not be quite ready to make that commitment where they can do that, where they're just too young, where they don't see the value of treating it like a job quite yet, you know. So it's nice to see and nice to hear as they start to get to those higher levels and get older. There's actually a system there where they can hone in on these little details that you wouldn't really get in a junior program. Even in these OHL programs that I see, like some of them are top tier, top notch. They have everything that you need, but the player's mindset just isn't quite there yet to really take advantage of what those resources are, you know. So from the college standpoint, a couple of the stats that you were reading out just in the presentation you did earlier. Yeah, for people for listening, you just did a talk like this to our academy families and parents. And one of the things that you said was the average age of when kids can expect to get a commitment or even a conversation. So talk a little bit about that time arc of when kids can expect that on the men's side, and if you can speak to the women's side too, then great. Of when they can expect to hear from coaches, be recruited, and ultimately start playing college.
Yeah, I mean that's on everyone's mind, right? Especially with the CHL drafts being so young. I'm Western Hockey League has a bantam draft,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy,
And
man.
and
Yeah,
their process is their
yeah,
process.
for
Like
sure.
we respect it, but what that does to a player when they're not committing at 16 and they're scrolling on Twitter and they see, oh man, I just saw 4 tweets of guys that got commitments, and I'm their age, or maybe I'm 1 year older and I'm still playing AAA hockey. That can kind of create some anxiety in the player's mind, and they start thinking, well, what am I doing wrong, right? Where's my commitment at 16? And the fact of the matter is that we look at every player who commits um, for NCAA Division One, and we look at where they played at 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, and the age at which they earn those commitments. Um, and it's definitely more common to play U18 hockey, high school hockey, prep hockey than people think at 17 or even 18 years old, right? They think if they're not drafted in the CHL, their career's over, or if they're not earning a commitment at 16, their career's over. But the fact is that most players will not earn that commitment until they're 19 years old, the average age, and they won't start college, their NCAA career, until they're 20. And so it's just like an expectation setting that I think we work a lot on with not only parents, because I think parents are a little bit more versed in what the reality is, but we try to highlight that to players, especially, and agents we talk with as well, especially the ones in Canada. They might not be very familiar with the NCAA recruiting timeline. So just setting that expectation and letting players know, like, the most important thing to do is work on player development, right? Is that's the thing that's going to get you from where you're at now to where you want to go, regardless of where you're playing.
Well, and so that's I was actually going to jump into something like that, anyways, from the player development side, because one thing that I find I'm constantly battling in conversations with parents is, or not just parents, I should say with players, more so than parents, is they're just in a rush to get to the league that you'll tell me all the players are coming from. So if you go by the stats, like between the USHL, the NAHL, the OJHL, things are going to change because of the eligibility rule change, which we'll get to that. But at least from where it stands now, I have these conversations constantly with players that are in a rush to get to, in Ontario, the OJHL, for example, and they might not be quite ready to do that. So when you say that a kid is getting their commitment at 19 years old, um, that I would assume it's from those, mostly from those leagues. Would that be correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The amount of players that commit out of minor hockey are small percentage.
Right.
Yeah,
But the age is 19
the age is
typically.
19.
So
Yeah.
so up until 19, I think it can create like a little bit of an illusion for, let's say, a 17-year-old kid where it's like, I need to be in the OJ today. And so rather than be the best guy where they're at or whatever, where they actually really get that development time, they get that focus to where they're a go-to guy and they get the playing time. I find that there's a rush to try to be at that highest level for exposure purposes. So when you guys do your research, what do you find in terms of players, or do you find that players are trying to do that too soon, or does it look like they're playing the patient game?
Yeah, I mean, no one's patient, right? They want to get to the next level on the first day that they got to the next level, right? Um, yeah, one thing that we always highlight, we call it our player pass research, and that basically outlines where they played at 16 through 20 and when they earned their commitment. And one of the highlights of that research is identifying where players were playing at 17. And we picked 17 because it's one of those ages that it's kind of like a weird
It's a
year,
gap.
you know,
Yeah, it's like gap.
like you
Yeah.
feel like if you're not playing juniors by then, you're like falling behind, or if you're not in a specific junior league by then, somehow falling behind. But we have so many case studies of guys that are not only in the NCAA but chose the NCAA route and are in the NHL now that were playing U18 at 17, right? And so it's just like you said, the perception is not the reality.
Yes.
Um,
So what would it be if do you know the numbers of that? Like how many kids at 17, for example,
for which
that
province?
so whichever, like just give me
Okay.
an example, like of 17-year-olds that go on to play NCAA, maybe that go on to play in the NHL, like how what kind of percentage are we talking that are playing U18 at 17?
So I would say that we just did our BCHL event at the BCHL showcase, and I believe there was 111 guys from BC on NCAA rosters, and I want to say there of those 111, there were only like 60 some playing juniors when they were 17.
Really?
And so whatever that
So maybe half-ish.
40%
Yeah.
maybe are not playing in the BCHL. Well, that might include a handful of guys in the AJ, for
Whatever. It's a, yeah,
example. Yeah,
it's a number that
but it's definitely not insignificant. There's a lot of players playing, in that province, in the CSSHL, the BCEHL, even the JPHL, matriculating on their way up to the BCHL. And yeah, and back to your player development question, people are in that province, and I use that one because the BCHL is a leader in NCAA recruitments for that province. They think all I have to do is get to the BCHL as fast as I possibly can, right? And the irony of that is the only focus you should be having is what do I have to do this year to make myself a better player and advance my development. And if that's in U18, so be it, right? I'm gonna play a ton of minutes. I'm gonna be a leader on this team. I'm gonna work out.
what was the quote you had on your presentation about being good at the job you're at now? Like
Oh
what is
yeah,
it?
yeah. So Jeff Blashill,
Yeah.
uh, years ago, Sean Hogan was our executive director. He was on staff at Western Michigan, and Blashill was a coach. And he said, "You can't focus on your next job until you do a great job where you're at."
Yeah,
Um,
that's super powerful.
and I mean, like that applies to every level, right? If you're in minor hockey, if you're in junior hockey, even in the I think back to my time in the ECHL, right? It's like guys come in and they're a high draft pick, second, third rounder, and they're down in the ECHL because they might have, spent some initial months of the season in the American League, and then they come back down to us, and in their mind, they're thinking, well, I shouldn't even be down here. I should be in the NHL, minimum, right? And it resonates at every level where, there's a reason why you're playing here, but the best part about that is you have the power to change it, right? You can do things on and off the ice to make yourself stand out and force them to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, that's super
Yeah.
powerful, man. I love that quote. When you were talking about it, I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
man, that's a banger. That
It's a
one's
good
great.
one. Yeah.
So what are you guys seeing in terms of how the NCAA landscape is changing, like Canadian players versus American players versus international players? Like
Oh yeah,
I
the
know that
international pieces.
yeah, so like
Yeah.
what's happening, because I know you were talking about the percentage in the NHL now is like 35% or so that are in the NHL that have come out of NCAA programs. Is that right? Is that the right stat? For in the NHL, 30, what is it? 1 in
Oh,
3?
33%
Yeah,
of
33.
players in the NHL chose college hockey.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's about 1 in 3. Yeah.
So now, because and it's growing. So because of that, what are you seeing in terms of demand from Canadian players coming over, international players coming over to join these programs, and how's that changing? Like how the schools are even doing the recruiting?
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, the CHL eligibility threw a wrench in everything, right? But up until that happened, we were seeing a steady increase in European players. Especially guys that will start in the USHL. I think there were over 100 players, maybe 120-ish. Don't quote me on that. Of Europeans in the NCAA, which is crazy because on this year's rosters, there's 184 from Ontario. So there's 100 and some
Wow.
from, there's
Yeah, they're
almost
coming in
the
next.
same
Yeah.
amount. Yeah. And I think that just speaks to the fact that, Europeans are kind of used to those kind of um, academy style programs where you it's not just practicing games. It's a holistic approach. There's nutrition, there's training, there's video, and so I think the NCAA path resonates with them. And then when you look at the data and see the NHL numbers related to the NCAA, it's almost like, okay, so I could have a great career, whether I make it to the NHL or not. And then you tie the academic aspect where, I mean, you have an opportunity to go to some of the best schools in the world,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
seriously.
Yeah.
So what does it look like in terms of the academics? Like that's a good point to drive home too. What does it look like for well, first of all, how about academically? What is the reality for these players that are coming out of these NCAA programs? Because most of them are not going to end up being NHL players just by the stats, right? So if we take the broader look at NCAA as an option, and I want to get back to the rule change too, because that's going to play into this question a little bit as well. But for kids from an academic standpoint, what does it look like coming out of an NCAA program? Division One, Division Three. I don't even know if it necessarily matters in terms of kids that are there to play hockey, but are finishing out with a degree or some kind of job prospect option afterwards. Like, what does that look like coming out of these programs?
Yeah. So we have one of the highest graduation rates in all the NCAA. 93% of college hockey players in NCAA Division One will earn their degree. I think that's like the number two graduation rate in all the NCAA. Now, what they do with that degree after hockey is endless. You are combining not only an amazing academic opportunity, but all the untold lessons that you learn while playing college sports applies to any industry, right? If you're in business, you're going to want to have someone who's reliable, who's smart, can think on their feet, can relate to people, right? I mean, that's all like those relationships you make along the way playing junior hockey,
Yeah, the
playing college
network. Oh
hockey, the
yeah, man.
network,
Holy.
and then also like discipline, right? You have shown by being an NCAA Division One hockey player that you see things through. You understand full concepts, right? You don't have just one job where, I can skate or I can shoot. You're part of a program. You're a piece of a bigger engine that's running, and that is valuable in any industry, right?
Yeah. So for kids that are looking to take the NCAA path, like what are some key academic milestones or eligibility milestones that they need to hit to make sure that, but even if it's not Division One, because like one thing that I've been super turned on to of late for a lot of these players, which is something I didn't really realize even when I was playing, is that you can basically get a full education through hockey, playing Division Three even. It's like with not we're not even talking Division One at a great school that has a great program. So like, what are some of these key things to make sure that they're eligible academically instead of just and when they're 18 or 19 and someone's talking to them, they're like, I got to figure out how to be eligible now.
Yeah, no, it's obviously college hockey has academic component, right? Yeah, so the biggest thing to make sure that you're on top of is taking your core 16 courses. So in high school, there's a set number of courses you have to take. You can check in with your guidance counselor. Sometimes teams will have academic advisors that you could lean on for that. We're also a free resource for parents or kids that are interested in learning more that they can't get the knowledge. So that's one piece. You got to make sure that you've taken core courses, and that's basically like, are you ready to take a college level course, right? If you can't take 4 years of English, how are you going to understand the literature in school, right? Um, the second piece is a standardized test, whether that's the SAT or the ACT or both. There's new legislation on that this year. They're no longer required for initial eligibility into the NCAA, but we recommend that players take that because you're going to probably have to take it to get into the university. And then also there's scholarship money tied to that. So if you're testing well, you have good grades, you could earn an academic scholarship. Um, yeah. So in terms of the academics, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think people read about the rule changes and they think about the NCAA and there's this perception that, man, this is some big complicated process, but it really is as simple as take your core courses, take a standardized test, and be a great player in junior hockey. And that combination is going to be what's going to attract college coaches to want to look at you.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other things too is that um, when you talk about how like Division One programs, they have their 18 scholarships that they can give out Division One schools for athletics. A lot of people don't, maybe they don't think about it, or they don't value how much you could actually get for your academic side, right? Where you might be able to save a school half a scholarship or a full scholarship just because of your grades. Is a full scholarship academics for a Division One school? Is that a stretch, or is that something that's actually reasonable where you could get like basically a full scholarship just from academics to a Division One school? Outside, I guess the Ivy League schools are straight
Yeah,
academic
the
stuff,
Ivy
right?
Leagues don't have athletic scholarships, but they put together financial packages to make those educations affordable. But yeah, I mean, I've seen instances where, talking with college coaches that are recruiting at showcases and stuff, and they'll say, this player fits our program, but um, maybe they're burning a lot of scholarships on other people, and so him being at the level that he's at, it doesn't make sense for me to extend to him a full ride scholarship, one of my 18. But if he can bring, 50% of the money through academics to the table, they're going to jump at it at 50%.
Yeah.
And so
So do you find that actually talking to the coaches, like they're seriously looking for this kind of thing? Like, could that be the difference between a program taking a kid or not taking a kid, is the fact that they could bring a 50% academic scholarship to the table for themselves?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you got to think the roster size is now, 29 ish guys, 28, 29 for some schools. And you have 18 to spread around all those different guys, right? I mean, even if you have studs at every position, at some point, you're not going to be able to recruit difference makers for the bottom of your lineup. And then, like with college, yeah, with college hockey being as competitive as it is, and how defensively responsible you have to be at that level, um, you know, your program almost can't afford it, right? You can't afford to not have difference makers in the bottom of the lineup. But that might change here with the House settlement coming in April. They might have as many as 26 scholarships, and they might cap that roster size at 26.
Yeah. So you were saying that in the presentation, then you were saying that some schools might not go to 26. They might stay at 18 or go to 20 or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, it's up to the individual school and their athletic department. They're going to run numbers and figure out, does this make sense for our program to offer every single player on our roster, even though we can go up to 26 full rides.
So it would be like a financial decision. Like, can we
Absolutely.
afford to put out
Yeah.
26? So if you're going to one of the big schools where they got all the money, then that's probably something that'd be easier for them. But if you're going to a smaller Division One school, then is it fair to say that's more of a consideration for them, or could it be across the board? Like if I go to a Michigan, I can't see why would Michigan not have 26 full ride
Well,
scholarships.
it you would think that,
Yeah.
right? But you kind of have to think of it in the eyes of the athletic director, right? You're running a whole program with multiple teams and scholarships, even though they kind of seem like, oh, they're just free, just let him come here for free.
Hmm.
The athletic department actually has to write a check. And if that student's out of state for the out of state tuition
Oh, true.
coming out of their budget, right?
True.
So
Yeah.
now their thinking is, okay, does our third goalie need a full scholarship?
Mm.
Maybe, maybe not.
So,
Right.
if I got a kid coming in and they're, let's just as an example, let's say it's 70 grand a year for international fees, full ticket price. That's what it is. If I'm offering that kid 70 grand, then the athletic department literally has to write a check for 70 grand per year for this kid.
It's the most common misconception
Really?
because you think it's a scholarship, just let
Yeah,
me come
X
here
it
for
out.
free,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But no, that athletic department has to actually write a check for that amount.
Wow, that's super interesting.
So yeah, there's financial concerns, but there's also a lot of reasons to do that, right? Um, having a lot more full scholarships will make it easier to recruit. Will field a better team, and you don't have to go up to the full 26. It's up to each school. They could be at 20, 22. Yeah.
So okay, so this is kind of the fun part now for me is the speculation. So this eligibility rule change that's happening with the CHL. What do you like from conversations that you have with coaches or whoever in the industry? Like, what is there? I know it's still super fresh, but what are kind of like some of the common kind of big points that you're hearing in terms of how this is going to impact whether it's recruiting or the rosters or um, how they're trying to seek out players now? Like is there any big things that it seems like this is the direction that it's going to go in terms of the NCAA or not really?
Well, it's so new. It's like 2 weeks old, so we don't really know how all the dominoes are going to fall. But one thing I think everyone knows is for certain is that these colleges are going to find players, the best players they can that fit their programs, right? And that's what it's always been. And so if that means there's a heavier shift of guys from the CHL, then that's what it'll be, right? But there's something else to be said about what were the previous college eligible junior leagues, the BCHLs of the world, those kind of leagues. Their emphasis was on player development and making sure that these guys are ready to make the next step up to the NCAA. And when recruiting, it's not just about what you see on the video or what you see on the stat sheet. It's having that relationship with the program director, the coaches. How is he on the ice in the room? Does he understand the game? Is he ready for college hockey? Those kind of insights are super valuable. And so I don't think colleges are just going to throw away those relationships because now CHL players are eligible. And as a player, you kind of have to think, does it make sense for me to go to the CHL and maybe play limited minutes just to say I'm in
Yeah,
the
exactly what we're
CHL?
talking about, right?
Or you could be a leader in another league, and it doesn't matter where you're playing because the one thing that won't stop is the diligence of these college coaches and the way that they know their player pools, the way that they get insights. They're watching video constantly. It's there's not a situation in the world where you are a NCAA caliber player and you're going unnoticed because of the league that you're in. Just doesn't exist.
Yeah, for sure. So for those leagues, like, so this is what I said this on a couple of the podcasts we've been talking about. I think it was within 24 hours of the rule change. I had one player within 24 hours, but then several others that we had talked to that were asking, "Hey, should I try to jump from this league to this league because I think it's going to be like more exposure, or whatever?" And my answer to them was, "I don't know. Nobody like let it
Yeah.
breathe for a minute, right? To see
Yeah.
to see what to do." But I think from the point of, most of these scholarships are going to be offered at 19. I don't see that changing. Like, that's not going to change. So maybe the CHL turns into that another, USHL type league where kids are not jumping there until they're 18 or 19 anyways. So like you still need to have another place to play. Like you still need to be measuring or trying to make a plan of what does my development actually look like year over year, and not just get super fired up to jump to the highest level like we talked about earlier, because this is something that we still run into every year where it's like, man, I got to get onto a junior A team. I got to get or I got to get to the BCHL. Like, it doesn't matter what I do. I got to get to the BCHL. And it's like, you're not even a dominant player in the league you're in, So if you're going to go there and sit and not actually get the minutes that you need to really get development and feel good about your game, then like, what
And
do you
juniors
expect?
is so short that you can't afford to burn a year on the bench, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the young kids especially, like I see it with for our guys. So we have the OHL draft at 16, and then the junior leagues around here, you have one or two 16-year-old spots. But it's not uncommon for like a 16-year-old to jump onto one of these rosters and they're not playing, And you were just talking about this before about like, you're 17 years
Neither
old.
is the right response.
Yeah, right. Like at
Yeah.
17, when you know that it's 19 is kind of the age, right? 19 is the age where a lot of players won't even have a conversation with a coach. So when it comes to actually making contact with the schools and reaching out to the coaches, what is that? Well, them reaching out to you, what does the process actually look like of interacting with the school? So from the school side towards the player, and then from the player towards the school side, like what do both of those kind of look like?
Yeah. So there's a recruiting rule that says college coaches recruiting cannot have a conversation with a student athlete before January 1st of grade 10. And so that is often before the CHL drafts take place, right? And so one common misconception is that, maybe no one's interested in me because I haven't heard anything from any college. There's 64 of them, right? But so they're not aware of that rule. They think that they're no good or they have no interest. Um, After that date, colleges can reach out. They'll go through their channels or reach out directly. If you have an advisor you're working with, maybe they'll have a conversation with them, and then they'll zero in and they'll track your games. Make sure that they see every piece of you, right? What's he like during a loss? What's he like during a win? What's he like when he's not on the power play? Things like that. And then they'll go through a due diligence process of talking with coaches that past and future, right? Or past and present. What was he like when, off the ice? All the things that you can't really gather from stats or video. So that's kind of how that goes. And then they put up their recruiting board and they say, okay, well, during these future seasons, that kind of lines up with when he would be eligible and ready to play, whether that's his 19-year-old year or 20-year-old year. The average age of freshmen is just over 20. So they'll kind of create that little timeline and then they'll make the offer. Now, from the student athlete's perspective, if you have a school that you're really interested in going to, you can reach out. Uh, I would recommend only reaching out to the assistant coaches because those are the guys that are going to showcases, watching your video, making those recruiting legwork, or taking all the recruiting legwork. Yeah, and just sharing any bit of information that you think would be helpful. If that's a hockey resume, if that's some academic components that you want to share, your GPA, any program within the university that you're interested in, just kind of opening that conversation, letting them know you're interested in going to that school. It goes a long way.
What are the maybe I don't know if you'd be exactly the right person to ask this, but the difference between a parent reaching out versus a player reaching out, and how coaches view the dynamics of that. So for me personally, like with in the direct role for our academy, when I like parents that are reaching out makes more sense because of the age group. So like for me, it doesn't affect me either way. If I get a kid that reaches out, that really sparks my interest because I think that's pretty cool that a
Taking the
kid is
initiative.
initiative
Yeah.
to do that. But at the higher levels, reaching out to now Division 1 programs, if you're now 17, 18, 19 years old, like what is that? Do they care? Like, does it matter to them, or is it kind of different per
You're talking
team?
about
Or
reaching out to the coaches
yeah,
or
so
reaching
like
out to the school for compliance, like academic
let's say reaching out
compliance.
to a coach. If I'm going to reach out to the assistant coach of a Division 1 hockey program, how do they view dad doing it versus kid doing it?
Yeah, I mean, college is not under 20 junior, right? This is men playing against men as old as 24 and 25. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with parents reaching out, like by all means, if you have questions, but I think it goes a long way, like you said, for your academy, showing that you're mature, both physically and mentally, saying I'm owning my development arc and I know that I can contribute to your program. And that kind of initiative coming from the player, I think resonates a lot more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then what about we talked about this a little bit earlier too, the social media element. So like for players, having a couple things. Like so I said to you earlier, like there's a positive and a negative side of the social media thing. So how is it if you're going to have social media, obviously what should it look like is the question, but how significant is it having like your highlight clips on a Instagram channel, your elite prospects up to date and like everything, like do those factors really matter, or how do coaches view social media, and how does that play into the recruiting process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Probably not the person to ask
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm not very active on social
yeah,
media.
yeah,
But um, yeah, I mean, the general rule is that it's your personal page. Like, just because you play hockey doesn't mean you can't have a life outside of hockey. You know, I think players want to express themselves, and that's perfectly fine. That being said, if you have something on your social media that could jeopardize your image, right? Your reputation. You only have one name. You only have one shot at, demonstrating that you're a good person. You have friends. You have family. You're passionate about hockey. You want to showcase that. All that is perfectly fine. But if social media is a reason to not take you, then in my opinion, it's a pretty dumb reason to not have that opportunity,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that I see is it's actually more common among younger players, but is using it as like a highlight platform for yourself. Is that relevant at all? Like, does that make a difference to anyone? Does anyone actually care to look at that? Like, anyone that actually matters in hockey? I'm not talking about, like some parents like having their kid highlights and all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about strategically using it as a recruiting tool for yourself. Like, is it impactful to have that? How worth it is it to use that to your advantage?
I think it's helpful. I mean, it's kind of akin to when players will reach out to assistant coaches and send them a video that's all their shifts clipped up, really easy to watch, a link to their elite prospects, maybe some other information. It just reduces the amount of manual labor that the staff would have to do in order to figure out who they are as a person and as a player. So, yeah, by all means, if you have highlights, just making yourself accessible is going to help. But at the end of the day, they're going to go out and find the best guys for their program, right? So, it's not going to make or break your career. I think it will. It'll always help getting your name out there, making an introduction, making sure that they know you. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know if it's something that you have to do in order to get there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta be a good player, man. Like that's
Yeah, yeah. I
that's it,
mean,
right?
like all the glitz and glamour is what it is, right? You can attract yourself, present yourself in a certain way, but like we always said when I was coaching, the video doesn't lie, and it doesn't stop either. And so, you could have the best looking highlights, but what are you doing away from the puck? How are you defensively? Do you understand the game and your role and where you fit in the whole system of that's super important.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too, because I always say, like Jake and I talk about this all the time too. Is like when people say video, send us video. I always say to people when they're asking about video, like I don't care to see highlights. Like I don't care. Like any kid you can chop up 10 plays in a year where you made an awesome play, and it's nice to see that you can do that. But it's much more interesting to watch those other details. Like give me a full minute of you in a shift and what you're doing, because most of that you might have the puck for 4 seconds. Like you don't have the puck for the other 60 seconds of your shift, right? So it's like if we don't get to see that, I don't know what to think, right? I don't know if you send me 3 toe drag goals, like I don't know what to do with that, right? I don't know if you know how to play, right? So I think that's a significant thing. I know you're not the expert on the female side of things, but I'm sure you know more than most. So um, all of these things, all like the stats, the eligibility rules, when the teams are going to reach out and give you college commitments. Are there any key differences on the female side that you know of or aware of? Because for a lot of I always say this with like men's and women's hockey, it's mostly the same, and then there's differences around the edges. But are there any key things that you know of um, that is a difference between those two sides and when things happen?
Yeah, so like you said in the beginning, Sadie Lundquist is our director of women's hockey, and she is very well versed on the entire landscape. But there's nothing that's glaringly different. I think our focus on the women's side is more tailored towards the growth aspect. Making sure that hockey is growing. There's taking great strides with the PWHL, and we want to add more women's programs. One cool thing that we can do at College Hockey Inc. is we can we can approach schools that want to have either a men's or a women's team. We work on both equally, and we can give them a free feasibility study paid by the NHL. And what that study will do is kind of outline what are all the aspects that you need to know if you were to have a program. And basically, those feasibility studies are the first step into adding more programs. And so that's an initiative that we work on. Sadie works on um, tirelessly to try to grow that game and create that equality. And I think the path for girls hockey is, it's something that you struggle. Do you play boys hockey, do you play girls hockey growing up, right? And so yeah, I would defer to Sadie on those, just because she is the expert. She's gone through you know not only working this job where you get so much exposure to so many people that are influencing the game, but she has playing experience too. She played at Bemidji and played in the PWHL as well. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting how college hockey is going to shape out. We talk that we think it's going to be the top of the development pyramid, where you can play out your minor hockey, hopefully locally, right, and then matriculate to juniors. Anywhere you play juniors will lead you to, the reasons to play college hockey on both the men and the women's side
Yeah, for
are the
sure.
same.
Well,
Yeah,
like I've been taking an interest um, over the last 2 years, much more seriously with the women's now because of the PWHL. It feels like they have more of a clear path where, like, okay, I could actually have this as a career now. Like I could actually go and play professionally, and I can see I can go from A to B to C. Where before it would be like I can get to college to play, and then like maybe I can try to go to the Olympics, or maybe I
yeah,
need to do something else.
and they
And
deserve that.
for sure,
I
it's
mean, yeah.
and I was talking to Danielle Serdachny, who's playing. I think she was second overall pick to Ottawa um, last year, and she was saying like kids, like girls, can have a dream in hockey now. Like they can actually see, yeah. The example she uses, like she says, I see on TikTok girls with videos road to the PWHL, like shooting pucks, and she was like, I didn't have that. Like that wasn't really a thing when I was a kid, and so how college hockey is now going to play into that. It'll probably look again very similar to how it is for men. Like they have this much more clearly defined path, and that's a area of interest for me big time because we work with a lot of the girls here that are really good players. They're super into actually developing into a professional. They want to know how to do the right things to get better, and it's awesome that they'll be able to get that. So those things are super interesting to me.
Absolutely, and I feel like it's a long time coming, and all the coaching quality and the training, every benefit is equal on the women's side. Like um, it's not like you're taking a lesser approach. Like it's the exact same experience, and now, like you said, they have a career outside of college hockey. Instead of just the Olympics, which is what it kind of seemed like for a while. And in the NCAA, that is the top of the pyramid for women's hockey as well. So combining the quality play, not only on the ice, but like you can go to some of the best colleges in the
Oh, the
world.
facility's
You
the
know,
same, like the
yeah,
lifestyles, everything is it's like
yeah.
it's an awesome opportunity both sides. But I always say this because I always end up talking mostly about men's hockey because I work mostly with men and I understand the game better on the men's side. And I just don't have a lot of experience working with women. But it's like Andy, my partner that I do this with, we always say this, it's the same shit,
Well, it's
man.
the exact
Yeah.
same.
It's the
When
same
I was
shit.
at Colgate, my office was right next to the director of women's hockey, and I'm pulling video, he's pulling video. We're literally doing the exact same stuff. It's kind of interesting to see like the perception, versus like the reality
Yeah.
of everything,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. So I know for us, we're kind of unique because we're in Canada. So it might be a little bit, the education is even more so needed in Canada just because we don't have the same access to college. Like even the university in Canada is nothing like university in the US besides maybe a few schools, but even then not really. Just in terms of lifestyle, alumni, presence, like what people think of college. Like you made the point again of the following for college sports is better than professional sports sometimes,
Have you
right?
seen the
So
SEC football?
yeah, oh my god, man. It's
Jeez.
it's insane. And like I remember we went to play Penn State a hockey game, and we went to the football game, and that was my first time going to a college football game, and it was Penn State versus Army.
Was it the
And
whiteout? Oh no, not the whiteout game.
no, but it was, I don't even know what it was, because
Yeah,
I showed up and
pandemonium.
it was like cars lined up through the grass. It was freezing rain. It was the most miserable weather ever. So we had our nosebleed seat, and it's like 100,000 people in that stadium at Penn State. So I think it's second biggest after Michigan, right?
They're bigger than college football stadiums are bigger than NFL
Right.
stadiums.
So
Yeah.
we're sitting nosebleeds in the freezing rain, and I'm watching a bunch of guys with no shirt on, yelling and screaming, and what, like, we're not really partaking. We have a game that we have to go play, but being in that atmosphere, it was unbelievable. Like, they had a field hockey stadium. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Have
right?
you been up to the Ralph at North Dakota?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you got to
No.
go.
I've seen just
Yeah.
videos of like what's going on around there, but
it's
I've never been.
unbelievable.
Is it?
My buddy from high school went there, not to play hockey, just as their aviation program. And I went up during college to visit him. We went to a game. Unbelievable.
It's ridiculous, man.
Like
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's top tier. Well, so for us, what I was getting at is, because the education piece, particularly where we're at, is missing, but I'm sure it's very similar in a lot of other places. Are there any big misconceptions or things that people just don't understand, or whatever other myth thing that should be addressed that people should know?
Yeah, I would say, it matters what league you play in. That's a big misconception. I don't think they fully grasp how diligent college coaches are when knowing their player pools, having relationships, finding these guys. They it's a lot more complicated of an effort and concerted effort than I think a lot of people realize.
Sorry to pipe in too, but tailing on that is, how important, not even just being on a certain league, but what about being on a really good team? Because
Yeah.
that's another one that I always get of just
Or even going down for a showcase, a specific showcase. It's just what it sounds like. It's a opportunity to show one brief, point in your career, of your season, how you're doing on that particular weekend. But anyone who is gonna, I don't think there's a single NCAA coach that would go to one showcase, watch one guy on one game, and give him an offer, right? It's the accumulation of work throughout the season, throughout multiple seasons, that earns you that opportunity. So it doesn't matter what team or what league or any showcase. That's a big misconception. Another misconception is that college is absorbently expensive, and I'm never going to be able to afford it. So I might want to try something else, right? The sticker shock is very huge. You look at an American university and you think, oh my God, 70 grand a year. I'm never going to be able to afford that, right? But especially Division I athletes very seldom pay even a fraction of that. You have athletic scholarships, you have academic scholarships, merit-based aid, and financial aid based on family income.
what did you say, merit? What is it?
Merit-based.
What is that?
Yeah,
Like,
so
merit based.
So based on how you do in school, based on how you do in the SATs, ACTs, your GPA.
And that would be like separate and distinct from specific academic scholarship, athletic scholarship.
Some schools don't offer merit and others do. It's up to the each individual school as to whether or not they offer that. Yeah.
Right on. Well, any other like kind of key topics or key like piece of information that you think people should know before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know that we're a resource for people. We're a free resource, never a charge. We can help you guys through any academic, athletic, recruiting question. NCAA eligibility seems like a big complicated mess, but that's kind of why we exist, is to help families get their questions answered and help them move on to college hockey and highlight the benefits of that development route.
Yeah, awesome. So where can guys find you? Like website, social media handles?
Yeah, so College Hockey Inc. is the name of our company. collegehockeyinc.com is our website. You can follow us on social media. I think our Twitter handle is just College Hockey, at College Hockey. And then, you can, on our website, there's directories of all the NCAA coaches that you can use. There's research that we publish region specific. Where do players play on the road to the NCAA? And then every piece of news and things that will come out will come through our social medias and on our website.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you coming down. I know it was a hike getting over here, so thanks for taking the time. Presentation day was awesome. Great information. Like, I know people are going to love it, so thank you very much for coming today.
Hey, anytime, man, and wish you guys the best of luck. It's exciting what you've done with the academy. I can't believe how big this building is.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing facility. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.